Good evening, everyone. My name is Katrina Eisman. I'm the chair of the Masters in Digital Photography program here at the School of Visual Arts. Thank you for joining us. I'm working on it, Franklin. We have quite an evening. It's such a special evening. We have 2 introductions, all right? And I'm honored to be the first. We're here to celebrate an inspirational image maker, one who we can all learn from. Howard Schatz embodies the characteristics of many successful professionals. He's dedicated, tenacious, and detail-oriented. But the one attribute that transforms Howard from being a good photographer to being a great one is his curiosity. Howard is constantly asking questions about software, hardware, lighting, photographic technique. But most importantly, he is constantly and deeply curious about humanity and the myriad of shapes, forms, emotions, and expressions humanity can show. It has been my honor to work with Howard, his wife Beverly, Martin Pedersen from Graphis, my staff, Tom and Marco, the entire SVA staff who have put in a lot of hours to make sure everything's going to work really, really well, and Epson America to make this evening possible for all of us. All right? So it's going to be an inspirational, fun, eye-opening evening. And on that note, Martin?
Well, thank you. I am also honored to be here, Howard, and so nice to have seen some familiar faces here this evening. Jay, who I haven't seen for years, and a number of others. Our guest this evening, Howard, is an exceptional young man. I can say that because I have 3 years on him. When he was 9 years old, his art teacher thought so as well, and she called his mother in, relating that her son had exceptional abilities in art, and that she ought to nurture that for his future, thinking that this person is going to have an amazing career for himself. After that talk, they walked home together, and his mother related to Howard, "What does she know? She's only an art teacher." His mother had bigger plans for Howard. She wanted him to become a doctor. And as we all know, that's what he became, but not just any doctor. He rose to the top of his profession as an ophthalmic retina specialist, authored over 100 scientific papers, and a number of books, medical books as well. His mother was, of course, proud. Between 1987 and 1995, 8 years while he was still practicing in his field, his medical specialty on the eye, something must have rubbed off. He bought a camera, or cameras, and spent every Saturday, while still in practice, photographing. He produced enough work on those days that resulted in 2 books, and at the same time devoured books and magazines on design, photography, architecture, and even typography, which was later to evolve in human bodies in typographic photography. Everything in the visual arts was an interest of his, and his photography started to become as diverse as his reading interests. He painted lasting images with his camera. In 1995, he went to his partners and asked for a sabbatical for a year where he would photograph full time. And they said, "Yes, of course you can have that, but how much money do you want? Because they were, I'm sure, quite successful in what they were doing. And he said, I don't need the money. I just want the time off. And I would also like a guaranteed that if it doesn't work out for me, that I can come back. And of course, they conceded to that without any question. He never did come back, however, sold his share in the business, and at the age of 55, still a youngster, of course, he and Beverly stepped off the cliff and came to New York City. It was clear that this was to be his passion. So here we have a young doctor, self-taught, with 25 successful years in the craft, attaining 20 books on 40 separate projects with exhibitions in dozens of museums, representation of his work in 3 major art galleries in the country. His work attracted clients like Ralph Lauren, Sony, Adidas, Sensei. What the ads for Sensei with his photography is art, and it should be in museums. Mercedes-Benz and Nike, whom coined the word, just do it. Well, Howard did do it. I can say this all because Howard, from what I know of him, is humble, doesn't have an attitude, and is also too smart, therefore, not to let any of this go to his head. Right? What he has achieved, however, is so awesome, it's hard to believe. Few of us will ever reach this level of mastery, but please don't envy him, or feel that he's lucky. He has made his own luck, long, hard hours of work. He told me that he gets up pre-dawn every day, beating himself up for great solutions, with waste baskets full of rejects. He calls his time working his brass butt syndrome and sticks with it until he finds solutions. And he calls it a visual treasury hunt. That's a great attitude to have. There are no rules for good photographers, and there are only good photographers, according to Ansel Adams, and you're one of them. He would be proud to have met you in his time. I don't know if you guys have read, but Graydon Carter did an extraordinary little statement on him. And he stated that, you guys know who Graydon Carter is, don't you? Vanity Fair editor. Did you read his testimonial? Or should I bore you with it? Okay. Howard Schatz is so versatile that his volume at times seems like the work of a dozen photographers. Weegee, Avedon, Penn, Beaton, Newton, and Good among them. He has affection for his subjects, athletes, dancers, models, actors, pregnant moms, and interesting nobodies. And it shows in every remarkable image, sometimes funny, often dramatic. He is a master both of the quiet, revealing portrait and the explosive surprise. So you would expect that at his present age, at 75, there would be bent over, walking with a cane, and finally retiring with so much satisfactory work behind him. Well, of course, that's not true. Howard is continuous energy, charged with what he loves. So when he gets up here, please be selfish and take advantage of his inspiration and energy. But before he comes up, take a pause, please, and make a note in your calendar, if you would, for the future. Write down the date, Monday, June 15th, 2040. That's 25 years from now, when Howard will be back with his next 2.5 decades of masterly work. I would like to think that most of us will be here. I know I will, and so will Howard and Beverly. So, mein Schatz, Howard, come up here and wow him with your eye candy. Let's have a huge applause for Howard.
Thanks. Thank you. That was beautiful. Hi. The 20 years that Beverly and I have been here in New York have been really wonderful. We've met people that we never would have met and gotten to know ever in our lives back on the West Coast. Artists, friends, people in design, in production, editors. The journey has been wonderful. And given that, I don't know that any of my images would be what they are without the collaborative help of artists from many different disciplines. And so I want to say that now. So when you look at an image, you understand that it wasn't just my holding a camera and making a picture. What I'm going to do is go through, this retrospective is quite big, so I'm not going to do it all, but I'm going to go through some stuff, and I hope that there's information for everybody that will be helpful for everybody, for experienced people, from curious observers, students. And at about 2/3 of the way through, I'll stop and we can take any kind of questions, and I'm going to end with some of the underwater stuff, and I decided I'm going to show all my underwater secrets. So that should be fun. I'd like to thank Katrin Eisman, who doesn't know it, but I've loved her since I met her. She's a great, brilliant woman, and has been an inspiration for everybody in photography, given her expertise in the digital world and her grace and intellect. I want to thank Dan Steinhardt. Epson has been very helpful to us. Other companies make great printers. We've used Epson printers. He's been tremendously helpful, and all the printing we do now, the museum printing, gallery printing, is done on Epson. And Dan bought 3 of these books from the signed and limited number of 500 and donated them. So these little tickets you have, we'll raffle them off at the end. The New York Photo Salon, which began January 1996 in my studio, allowed us to do this, and I'm appreciative. And then I want to mention something about Martin Peterson. You don't quite know, many of you, who was just speaking here, but in terms of design, this was Mozart standing here, truly. Graphis is, to me, the most important, one of the most important publishing powerhouses in the world. It's an essential ingredient in the life of anyone in the world of visual imagery. Graphis produces these books, and anybody who doesn't look at these books and buy these books and read these books and study these books is missing out on what's going on throughout the entire world of design. And it's thanks to this one single individual. He has annuals in advertising, photography, and posters, annual reports, and typography, logo designs, new talent, and I'm just naming a few. These are all covers or images from these books that come out every year. Marty was awarded in 2003 the AIGA medal, a rare medal for his work in Graphis. And in 1997 was elected into the Art Directors Hall of Fame. And in his career, he's won more than 300 industry awards. So it's really, truly, humbly a phenomenal honor that I've known him, that he's published our work, that he made this introduction. And so thank you very much, Marty Peterson. Marta, okay. Marta Hallett is the owner and publisher of Glitterati. She was the head of Rizzoli Books and then opened her own publishing house. And she came to me in 2012 and said, and so what did I say? I said, I don't think I want to do that. I told her, I want to move forward, I want to grow, I want to search into the unknown, I want to be scared, I want to see what I haven't seen. Why would I want to go back and look at all that stuff that I've edited already, that I've grown away from, that I've moved on from? She persisted. So I thought about it. And I'm going to give you a reason why I did it, but it certainly could have been ego. And I gave into it, but between 1987 and 2012, when she approached us, I had done over 40 separate projects, and there were 4 million images. I feel that autobiographical studies may well have some meaningful function. It may be worth looking back at one's life, not for the sake of telling the world, but for learning who you are. So I asked myself, what if I have something to learn? What if there's some gems in there that I haven't found, that I missed? Certainly possible. Have I grown? Have I changed? Or I'm shooting the same old stuff all the time? And who am I? So I thought it would be really healthy to do, even though I dreaded doing it. She persisted. She called again. And then I said, okay. I said, I think since there's 4 million images, it's going to take us a year. She said, that's okay. So everyone needs an editor. And what I mean by that is you can't see your own work for what it is. Every shoot, I remember so much about the shoot, sometimes everything. I remember the hair and makeup people and the stylist and the models and talking to them about their lives. I remember the setup and the set design. I remember the problem shooting. I remember some of the junk I photographed. I remember the edit. I remember everything. And so that biases my ability to edit. Nobody can purely edit themselves too well. And everybody needs an editor. And I want to tell you who are students here, your friends are not editors. Your friends will say, oh, wonderful, terrific, fabulous. They're your friends. They're there to support you and make you feel good. Everybody needs an editor who loves them loves them enough that they will tell them the truth. So throughout my professional life, I've lived with my editor, Beverly Ornstein, who was absolutely honest with me. I could do a shoot. There could be 500 images from the shoot. I'll edit. I'll take a week to edit. I'll get down to 2, 3, 4 images. I'll say, Beverly, take a look at this. Excitedly, she looks, and then she'll say to me, which is the worst thing in the world, can I see the other images? So, of course, looks at all the other images, and then Beverly will look at me like this and say, well, it's well done, but nothing gets me. So everybody needs somebody like that. So Beverly and I knew that for us to produce this retrospective, we needed a third party, somebody who loved us enough that would tell us the truth. And we found the perfect person. Somebody who's the most straightforward, honest, and possibly honest person I know, and happened to become available. And it was Steve Fine, who was a world-renowned photo editor. And Steve worked with us, and the 3 of us each edited all the images. It took 8 months. We looked at every image from every shoot. Steve sat there and worked his butt. In the final edited version, every image that we picked had 3 yeses. You know, I would find an image I really liked. I think it's great. I think it's terrific. And either Beverly would say, well, it's okay, or it's not a 10. It's maybe 9.5, but it doesn't belong. And Steve would say, doesn't belong, just like that. Nope, sorry. And even though I wanted to convince them, I had bought into, I was going to listen to them and let the edit flow and let it be what it was. And the result was, from 32 separate projects, we found 1,083 images. And I sat then 4 more months with Alex Spacher, who is the lead creative designer of Departures magazine, a wonderful designer who had designed our Caught in the Act book and our boxing book with Carla Frank. And we produced that. It's a 2-book box set. Each book contains 415 pages and 16 chapters, so there's 830 pages combined. And we looked for a soft, special polycarbon material because I wanted you to be able to put the book in your lap and turn pages and see in the gutter rather than have a hardcover book that kept you from seeing the whole image. And we sat and designed this, and this is what we produced, that. And so I'd like to talk about the projects which really, as I thought about it, come from evolution and cross-fertilization. I'll show you what I mean. Essentially, if you put everything I've done together, it comes down to dance, which has informed the whole bodies of work, and portraiture. And so let me start with dance. When Beverly and I moved from San Francisco to New York in October '95, nobody knew who I was. We were in a big 5,000 square foot Soho studio we were renting, and I was yearning to work. And I photographed dancers. I would go to the Joyce Theater, the American Ballet Theater, New York City Ballet, Alvin Ailey, Dance Theater of Harlem, David Parsons, Paul Taylor, Merce Cunningham, etc., and sit with binoculars and the playbill and making notes of what dancers I wanted to get into the studio, and I wrote them. And I told them I'd pay them, and they came, and I shot virtually every day. Every day I shot dance, and these are some of the images. Oh, in this book, nobody really reads. A lot of photography books come with glorious introductions from great writers and intellectual thinkers, but very few people read that stuff. So I decided that what I would do is just describe what I had in mind in 2, 3 little paragraphs, each of these 32 chapters. So the chapter on dance, there's 2 or 3 paragraphs that I said what I wanted to say, and there are the images. On the right, Richard Witter, I said, I want you to just go back, 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 and I'll take the picture just before you fall. And so he did it. I said, Richard, it looks too easy. So he gave me that. The image on the right, I wanted to illustrate the idea of balance. In 1937, Vasily Kandinsky did this thing called 30, 6 by 5. Which I saw at the Guggenheim. It just was inspiring. And I had offered to shoot the Momix Dance Company and did this. So this is a borrowed idea. In art, it's fine to borrow ideas. People say stealing. I didn't steal the idea. I borrowed an idea and I made it my own. And I think that's a great way to push on and advance and advance and advance. And look what Samsung is trying to do with Apple. Dancers. There's nothing like dancers. The great David Parsons, I had each of his dancers make a letter with a light. So I used a trampoline a lot. Why did I use a trampoline? Here I am sitting, using a long lens. It's a black background. I have certain lights going on. There's Olivia Bowman, a great Alvin Ailey dancer, jumping on a trampoline. Why did I use a trampoline? I did not use a trampoline so they jump high. I did not use a trampoline so that I could have time to take a picture. At the top, they stop for a fraction and they go down. If I had them just jump, I could take that same picture. I used a trampoline so they would jump 1,000 times. If they were jumping on my hard floor, after 10 or 15 jumps, they would say to me, I have to perform tonight. I learned that really quick. On the trampoline, they jump lots of times, because they land soft. That was the purpose of the trampoline. And the trampoline has been a great friend to me. And that's how I made the picture on the left. The picture on the right, the great Andrew Asnes and Rachel Berman. When a man holds a woman, his center of gravity is low and his feet are flat. You take a look at the ballet. When you go to the ballet, you see one of the men holding women. He's got to go down. She's 100 pounds, or maybe 120. If she's more than 120, he goes, oh, honey, this is too much. But it's the foot. It's his foot. And the strobe is on for 1/1000th of a second. I only need 1/1000th of a second for the heel to be off the ground. So sure enough, get set, get ready, 1, 2, 3, boom, and he went up and down. And I had time to take a picture. It's the pointed toe that brings the life to these pictures. And I made pictures, and I made pictures, and I made pictures. And the greatest dancers to me is the Alvin Ailey Dance Company. They're here in December at City Center, all December. And if you've never seen them, go. Go once, twice, 3 times. They're great. They're ballet trained, modern dancer, and the choreography beats the hell out of them. And they're just amazing. Gatita Waldo is one of the first dancers I photographed, a prima ballerina in the San Francisco Ballet when we were in San Francisco, and I'm going to come back to Gatita a few times. We did the DNA with dancers in the studio. You can sort of see the progression of the spider. I'm going to talk loudly because this microphone may not follow me. Can you hear me? So you can see how these 18 people, there's 8 legs on each side, right? And there are 2 people on these legs, so that's 10. There's 4 people here, that's 14, 15, 16, 17, and this girl underneath 18. So there are 18 people. And the way I did this is after I took the picture, I said to them, okay, let's get up slowly, and I photographed backwards. And then I just played it back this way, and that's how we made this particular spider. But it's only dancers. You know, dancers are the greatest subjects for photography because they take direction. If a dancer doesn't take direction, if they're a jerk, they're not a dancer. They're not accept. They're gone. So dancers will do anything you ask. And the other thing is they have a motor memory. You could say, your hand, can you raise it a 1/4 inch and turn it just a little bit? Okay, jump again, do the boom, they do that. So dancers are like clay for you. And they have this power and this energy that you can sort of mold to a vision. It's a wonderful thing. These are many dancers. I'm going to show you how I did this a little later. But just imagine I'm on the ceiling, okay? Shooting down. I love topography, as Marty mentioned, and fonts. And I've done many kinds of fonts. This is a font with 5 dancers for the big letters and 3 dancers for the little letters and numbers. That's in that book. How did he do this? How did Schatz? How did he do this? 5 people here. I'll tell you later. So, the ladder. I wanted to make the New York Times T with dancers. So in our studio, we have a ladder on the ceiling. So the ladder is hinged on the ceiling, it's there all the time, and we just go up on another ladder and unhinge down here, and the ladder comes down. This is permanent, okay? And then I can get on a ladder and direct and shoot down. And that's how I did that. I sent this work to, well, this work was published as Passion in Line after 2 years of publishing, and the great Martin Peterson told me it was great work and that it should be published and wanted to make something marvelous, and there it is. So I thank you as I've thanked you a million times. So just about this evolution business, the dance has led to that dance work, Passion in Line. It's also led to underwater work, which I started with dancers. And if you shoot dance, you naturally shoot athletes. You know, athletes are not like dancers. They can do one thing or 2 things. They can throw, or they can jump, or they can catch, or they can twist, or they can flip, but they can't do everything a dancer can. But still, it's a natural progression to study athletes after one studies dance. And of course, studying each dance and athletes, one would be quite interested in studying their bodies. And so the underwater work has evolved into 5 different projects and books. The athletes, many, many projects, of some of which I'll talk about, as well as the human body. As for portraiture, I've done many individual projects, worked seriously with a number of actors, and then the work with models is something very special in terms of fashion and beauty. So athletes and human body. I had dancers in the studio, and they were you know, I beat the hell out of them. I tell them, if you walk out of here today after 4 hours of work and some breaks and maybe lunch, and you said that was fun, we failed. I want you to crawl out of here because it was so hard. You've got to give everything to it. So I had two dancers, a man and a woman. They were so exhausted, I was beating the hell out of them, so making wonderful pictures. And they were sitting down on the studio floor together, holding each other. And so I came in close. You know, when you come in close, your eye is a wide-angle lens, and I saw this thing, and therein was born this project. It's biologic sculpture. It's really interesting to me, and I haven't gotten tired of it. I can still hear the squealing from the room temperature, 72-degree chocolate being poured over these two girls. I said, don't move, don't move, don't move. I want the drip lines to be true. I got a tripod pass at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and there were these three women I learned later were Kansas school teachers visiting New York in the summer, admiring a Rodin sculpture. And you know, we all have narcissistic feelings of, I want my work to be in a museum. So I said, can I photograph you guys just appreciating that Rodin? Your faces won't be in the picture. They said, sure, but this won't be some nudie picture, will I? I said, no, 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 no. And so I made the picture of them admiring the Rodin. I removed Rodin's sculpture and I replaced it with a body knot. One day, maybe. You know, in photography, they say the deader, the better, so who knows? There are 3 tushes in each pearl. 3 little tushes in each pearl. It's just an idea. The work with the athletes has been phenomenally interesting, and Steve Fine has been tremendously helpful to me in terms of his vision, his ideas, his knowledge, and some assignments. Now, this was an assignment from Sports Illustrated and Steve to study the great hitters of Major League Baseball, in this case, Ichiro. I studied the body types of all these athletes, and although there were 200 athletes in the project, this is 30-some male athletes from each different discipline. It's quite something if you could see it up close, but with any kind of movement study, dance or sports, it's interesting to try to find motion, and I'm going to talk about motion a little bit later, but it sure is informative. You can even see this giant swing the gymnast did is not a circle. This dark line is the shadow from his pants. And you can see it's not a circle. It's because he has to whip it around. Terence Trammell, the great hurdler, in my studio hurdled and tripped in the shower when we were all finished. But he was okay. I am a lover of tennis, and this is Paul Rose. There's a tennis club on 8th Avenue and 26th. 8 courts upstairs, Hartrue, and Paul is one of the pros, and came to the studio, and we worked almost a whole day to make this image. Amy Mullins, who was born with that same Oster Pistorius syndrome of feet attached to the lower knee, amputate and fix with prosthesis at 1 year of age, so the kids are normal height, was a great athlete, Paralympic athlete, and ran on Coney Island Beach in the middle of winter. These on the right are the hip flexors of the greatest woman triathlete in the world. And I studied women too. This is the path of the discus before he let it go, Adam Sutliff. To study this is just interesting. I did this for the New York Times Magazine, the Oklahoma City Thunder. They each gave me 1 jump. They gave me 1 jump. You understand? They gave me 1 jump. I said, Steve said, can you make a picture that's bended like Beckham? And we painted a studio black. We worked hard and made this image. And Darren Rawls on a trampoline in my studio. Olga Karmansky, a rhythmic gymnast, she did this to stretch, so I recorded, I watched. You know, as photographers, we should observe. And then I took a Polaroid, this was 15 years ago, I showed her mother, she's 15, and her mother, I said, Mrs. Karmansky, look what Olga did. And the Russian Mrs. Karmansky said, she could do better. Okay. This is Alan Johnson, the great hurdler at Hayward Field, which is the tip of Manhattan, Columbia Sports Field. And I really worked at this. I had photographed 3 or 4 hurdlers and failed until I finally figured out what to do. And this is what I did. If I had him just jump this hurdle, this foot was in a different place every time, and this foot was in a different place every time. So I placed a hurdle here, and 10 yards later here, and 10 yards later here, and then another hurdle 10 yards later here, and I made him run the whole 40 yards. And his foot landed in exactly the same place each time. And therein, I was able to freeze my camera, get 3 or 4 images, do it again, 3 or 4 images, do it again. 5, 6, 7 times I had enough images to make this collage. So, having expected some students here, I thought I would throw out some life lessons in photography. So for those of you who know all these things, please, I apologize. I hear simple all the time. Oh, we take a simple softbox and we put the person here and we set the softbox there and we take a reflector. Simple, beautiful picture. Well, it's the worst thing I ever heard. It's the best way to make mediocrity. There is nothing terrific. There's nothing magnificent. There's nothing special that isn't complicated and difficult and challenging and almost impossible. That's when something great can happen in front of your camera. This picture of Bernard Hopkins, this portrait, I'm proud of this portrait. I love this portrait, but this portrait took 9 different lights, every single one set up with extreme care and precision. To light the background, took 2 lights behind this and 2 lights behind that. It's 4 lights in the background. There's rim lights behind him, creating this light on his side with a grid so that it doesn't hit the camera lens, and another one here. There are 2 up lights, and there's a down light. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 4 in the back is 9 lights. Similarly photographed, and then without any light in the background, is this James Kirkland boxer. I used this light for boxing, this uplight, and made this picture. And every light was set with, you know, I call it, I put on my surgical cap when I go into the studio to set the lights. It's done with care and precision and exactness and measuring f-stops and distance and size. And then once that's done, then you can be crazy. Then you can try things because you know everything is going to turn out okay. Then we can be opened up. It's sort of the difference between science and art, which I'll talk about in a second. Here is a light. Here's a model. There's a blue light on a 6x6 scrim, another light on a scrim, a light on her hair, and a light in front, and every light set exact to create this kind of picture. I'm going to talk about the 2 pictures on the right in a second, why there's a difference. So simple, you're not likely to achieve anything new or special. Make nice pictures. You can make somebody happy, but you're not going to push forward. You're not going to grow. You're not going to push into the unknown, into the places where you're surprised. Secondly, I recommend the photographers to shoot flat. Now, most of you in this audience don't care about this, but I'm going to show you what I'm going to mean anyway. Don't shoot for the computer screen. If somebody is doing a commercial shoot, I'm doing a commercial shoot, and I'm shooting flat, and I shoot for the screen, the client will look at the screen and go, yeah. But then I sit down with a little image, a JPEG of the image, and I'll do 2 or 3 things, and I'll make it whoo, and then make something really nice, and I'll show you what I mean. So you see on the left, but the background was painted by Deborah Friedman, a great artist who's done a number of background sets for me. whose work whose I've collaborated with a number of times. But you can see on the left, it's pretty flat. Why flat? Because if you shoot to make blacks, you can't get any detail. That's it in post-production. If you shoot to make the whites white, there's no detail. You shoot to make detail everywhere, and then you can do what you want. And then, after doing what I want, I can even change the color. So I recommend to students, shoot flat so that you have all the information. This is when we shot film 15 years ago, we shot for contrast, because you couldn't do much after that. But nowadays, you shoot for detail, and then you can do anything. The third parable is, I think it's important that if you're going to work in an area, that you should be a scholar of your field. You should know what others are doing and what's going on. This is a third of my books. I used to buy any book that had one idea in it. And now I have no room, and I'd still buy books, but they sit here and there, and my sweet, dear honey of a wife says to me, couldn't we find a place for these books? But I think it's important to know what others are doing and to study these, and I know all these books. So nowadays, I think you do screen grabs. I have a file called grabs, and there's every kind of, there's fashion, there's beauty, there's body, there's feet, there's hands, there's location, there's water, there's mountains, there's anything you can think of. And these are a bunch of grabs I've done in the last month or two that I haven't filed yet. And what is a screen grab? You have a picture on a screen, and you take a picture of it, and then it's on your computer, and then you have it. And I study websites. Anytime I see somebody's website, whether it's a designer, a photographer, an artist, an illustrator, an architect, a topographer, I'll study their website. You gotta learn something. You gotta learn something. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you go, eh. But very frequently, somebody working in a field, really working digitally, there's something there that there's a light and an idea, and I'll grab the idea. So I think it's important to be scholarly in your work. Now, I don't read the Bible, but I saw this. Now there arose a new king over Egypt, and he knew not Joseph. What do I mean by that? Well, this came from an op-ed piece by a political writer who was talking about two heads of state making an agreement, and then they leave, and new heads of state say, screw the agreement, and go on and do something else. So that happens in this field of photography, and it probably happens in everything. I'm not sure, but I know it happens in photography, and it's happened to me many times. When we were here in 1995 and I started shooting dance, Richard Philp, the editor of Dance Magazine, heard about what I was doing, came to the studio, said, this is great, would you do a cover for us? I went, sure. And we did a cover for him, and then I did all his covers. And then the magazine was sold, Richard Philp was thrown out, and the new people didn't know who I was, and that was the end of that. So I'd done all these dance covers. This has happened to me with Dance Magazine, Time Magazine, Vanity Fair Magazine, Sports Illustrated, ESPN Magazine, and probably a few others. And I'll tell you the solution to it. This is Vanity Fair. I worked for Vanity Fair every month. There was one of these in-character things where I gave the actor something to act and say and do. I made up a dialogue. They did it. This is Sissy Spacek. And it was published. It was quite great. But then the editor changed what he was doing, and that was the end of that. 2006 to 2012. So the solution is you have to be a moving target. You need to grow constantly. You can't stop evolving. You can't let something like that say that's the end of my life. You've got to keep moving and finding. I shoot to surprise and delight myself. And that treasure hunt for visual imagery allows this constant evolution. So let me talk about boxing. Why boxing? I studied boxing from 2006 to 2012. I was fascinated with boxing. I had shot athletes, and boxers included, and I realized boxers are just like other athletes. They have to work hard, self-sacrifice. They have to be talented. They have to have all the characteristics of hard work and focus and talent that other athletes have, but they have another thing. They buy into the fact they're fighting adversaries whose main goal is to put them in a coma. Who does that? And I don't have that kind of courage. If somebody threatened me or hit me, I'd turn around and get away as fast as I could. But Kelly Pavlik, at 8 years of age, who was a great middleweight, got hit in the nose. He said, I tasted blood and got me excited. I couldn't wait to get after that guy. That's what boxers are like. And so this they call it heart in boxing. Roy Jones, the great Roy Jones Jr. talks about it. He has heart. Boxers get beat up and he still comes at that really interested me. And so my job, a scholarly job, was to do it almost like a doctoral thesis. I interviewed everybody I could that was important to boxing and knew boxing well, who were not boxers. Judges, commissioners, referees, trainers, cutmen, announcers, writers, promoters, managers, ringside physicians. I had them come to the studio and I interviewed them and they taught me. The great HBO television announcer Jim Lampley, who was here, came to the studio and had much to teach me, as did everyone else. And then I was able to embark on studying boxers, interviewing them and having them in my studio. So these are some of the images I made. That's Roy Jones Jr. on the left. And the other thing about him, he announces with Jim Lampley and Max Kellerman. He's the third announcer. He's really smart. He's really insightful. And he brings information to the two of them who are really knowledgeable with boxing and have been in boxing a long time. Information that's special and new because he's been a boxer. And this is the great Manny Pacquiao. I photographed champs from 100 pounds to the great Vladimir Klitschko, 250-pound heavyweight, has been heavyweight longer than any heavyweight other than Joe Louis. And I want to talk about Klitschko in a second. And I made these pictures. I made these pictures. I'm going to come back to the Mike Tyson picture in a little while. The thing about boxers is they sit in a corner for a minute between rounds. They have gloves on. These vicious, violent, aggressive men are absolutely vulnerable. They're sitting there. Nothing they can do. And the cutmen and the trainers are throwing water on them, throwing grease on them, wiping them off, putting ice on them, and they have to sit there and do that. And I realized, heck, I can do that in the studio. And I did. They let me do anything. And I threw water, and I threw everything. And their faces from every land. They come from Asia and Africa and Europe and South America and Central America and all over the United States. I shot at the Dallas Stadium. Now you remember that this is 180 feet, 60 yards. This thing. The ring is here. This 20-foot ring is here. Who would watch the fight for real? I mean, it was quite incredible, this thing. This is the football field, goes from here to here. There's Manny Pacquiao and Margarito in a fight, and it just really was quite remarkable to me. If you're at the ring, you can't see the screen, of course. And I shot, Steve allowed me to shoot from ringside, and I shot from ringside all over the place. Atlantic City and Madison Square Garden and MGM, and all over. It was quite tremendously physically challenging. I would be at ringside, leaning over, doing everything I could to be my timing, to get it just right. And for 3 or 4 days, I had crushed my chest on the corner of the ring, and I was in pain for 3. But if you had a good picture, it's absolutely worth it. And Steve, I was looking for who's going to publish this. Steve said, we should publish it. Sports Illustrated, Time Magazine, Time Incorporated should publish it. And so that was a great gift. And Jim Lampley, who wrote the introduction, this is a man who was a special genius. His introduction was his interview. I mean, his interview was not just complete sentences, but complete, complicated, thoughtful paragraphs. We took his interview as he said it and was about to publish it. He said, I might want to make a little edit or two, which he might have, but it was quite incredible that the words come flowing out of his mouth like literature, prose. So I want to talk about motion study, which it's my current really passionate search 4. You leave the camera open. Instead of the camera going 1/500th of a second, or 1/25th of a second, you leave it open for 1/8 of a second, quarter, half, 1 second, 2, 3, 4. If you leave it open 4 or 5 seconds, even a black studio is going to start turning light. So there's a limit. So we can use strobes, pop, 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 of this prima ballerina, or this person swinging on a swing. I'm very proud of this picture. This is one frame, taken one frame. I set up 4 strobes. I coordinated them so that one would go off and one would have a little 10-second delay, and another 100-second delay, 100-second delay, 100-second delay, then the other one, and they go off every 0.04 seconds, 0.6 seconds, 60 strobes. It was just quite wonderful. Now, when somebody jumps, they jump up and down, right? Right? When you're jumping rope like this, right? Up and down. How did I do this? How did I do that? I moved the camera. So during the strobes, I just moved the camera in order to get this Sergio Martinez jumping rope. Anyway, Tiki Barber catching a football in the studio. I did many physics studies. There's 6 ping pong balls thrown against the blackboard and then fall. And what you see is that as the balls accelerate with gravity, the space between them gets greater. And after they hit the board, they dribble off as energy is dissipated. It was interesting to me. This is the great Michael Motion, who never missed a ball, but with the strobes going off, the balls were all over the studio. It's great. Now, how did I do this? This was, again, just a physical study, and I did it to see as a treasure hunt. It was just a cube of silver poles. 4, 4, 4. 12 silver poles I put on a string and spun at various speeds using strobes at various delays and intervals. And everyone turns out a little differently. You know, it's weird and peculiar, but it's what interested me, and I found that I could use in all kinds of ways. Luke Donald. So sometimes we use a strobe and we leave light on, and that's what the writing is. This is what we call available or ambient light. Photograph is to write with light. So there's a strobe here when the sync opens, when the shutter opens, and then when the shutter closes, that's called rear sync. Bing. And so we're able to study the path, the whole path of the gymnast or the model. And this is just rear sync. 2 Olympic fencers coming toward each other, and then strobe right at the end. And sometimes we just use ambient light without a strobe. So given this ambient light without a strobe, it occurs to me, why use a body? Why not just use light? So I hired dancers, I put them in black, and I had them do light studies, paint with light. This girl, Lena Parr, did the alphabet for me. I made a little form in which we did the letters. She would do a letter, we'd look at the screen, I'd say flatter, longer, taller. I was able to manipulate the choreography of the letters, and we were able to make a font, which really interested me. But we were able to do lots of things with lights. This is a project that, if there are any students here, would really be worth exploring. How did I do this? This is light moved behind the dancer. So there's no light on the dancer, so the dancer is a silhouette. But the dancer is moving, and the light is moving. And so the strangest things happen. And I haven't explored this too much. Maybe I've taken 30, 40 of these kind of images. But I feel this is a great project. And, you know, I have so many other things I want to do. One day I'll return to this. And then I said to myself, if I can do this with light, maybe I don't need the light. Maybe I can just do it with a computer. And so these things came from that. And this is sort of middle of the night work. And then I said, why not use these things and project them on bodies? And so the patterns that I made with the computer, we made into a super slide and projected it onto these bodies. It's evolution. So now, I thought I'd talk about the human body, but how about we'll turn on lights just for the sake of everybody's in the dark. I don't see any faces. I don't know who. Yeah. Can I answer any questions? If there aren't any questions, it's okay.
Wait. We have to use a microphone.
How about I'll repeat the question?
How
How about we'll do it your way?
Hi, Howie. Your influence in working as a doctor brought you communication skills and a more scientific look at optics and things like that. So there were a lot of advantages to it. Were there any disadvantages of being a doctor?
Yeah. Good. Well, that'll be the last question, okay? You know, I learned a lot from medicine. I learned about methodology, studying things, using one variable at a time, making notes, learning, being careful. I learned when every patient that was referred to me as a retinal specialist was afraid of going blind. They came scared to death from all parts of the Western United States. And I learned to behave in such a way that within a minute or two they would feel, I'm in the right place. This is the right guy. And that helps with portraiture. That helps me with strangers. I can generally talk to anybody and feel comfortable. And if they're not going to be nice to me, it's okay. You know, it's all right. And don't take any offense. But I'm able to somehow do that. And I was a physics major and a chemistry major in college. And the study of physics helped me learn optics and lenses. But young photographers learn that stuff pretty well. So medicine brought me a lot. The problem with medicine is it's about getting it right. You make a mistake, you can lose an eye. 1 millimeter, 1 micron mistake in a surgical procedure can mean blindness, and sometimes of the only eye. So it was behaving in such a way that everything was exact. Well, in my studio, it's being crazy. It's trying anything. It's being open to all kinds of ideas. I'm always open. There's always 5 or 6 other artists there. Hair, makeup, stylists, set design, all kinds of people. And I'm open to, why don't you try this? I might say, let me explore this one thing, and then we'll go to that. I'll make a note that they said that. So it's about mistakes. It's about making mistakes to surprise yourself. So it's a different way of being, and in a way I'm different. At one point I was like this, and now I'm like this. So let me go on. Oh, there's one more question.
Hi, Howard. I'm just wondering, being able to photograph so many styles, have you ever encountered or had a hard time from editors or the industry trying to tell you, no, you have to stick with this style, because photography industry is kind of like that. If you're like able to shoot so many styles and do so many great things like you do,
I got it. I got it. I shoot, I really want to just make my own pictures. It's important to do editorial work because for a few things. Sometimes the editors have great ideas and it's something to explore that you haven't thought of and gives you a chance of being published and being noticed. And I do commercial work to pay for the addiction of doing my own work. So when I do commercial work, I'm sort of like the contractor. There's a house owner, which is the company. He hires an architect, which is the art director company, the advertising company. They set a house plan, they set a campaign, then they find a subcontractor, a photographer, to do the work, and I have to do the work where they want to. And so I'm a different person. I pay attention, I listen carefully. The best ear in our team is Beverly. She tells me, I sometimes say, what does he want? But she hears and knows and exactly, and I do what they want. And the idea is to get them the picture they want by lunch. So that they become bored. And when the client becomes bored and they're looking at their computer, the other part of the studio, and they've had enough already, they got their picture, I then say, since we're paying everybody till 5 or 6, how about let me try some things? They say, oh, go ahead. And then it gives me a chance to try some things. And sometimes these things work out. They work out for me, or they don't work out, but I mostly shoot for myself. So let me go on. I'd like to talk about the human body, which has remained a phenomenal fascination for me, unless there's another important question. Hi, Deborah. That's Deborah Friedman, who did the backdrop on that one picture. I may have a few more of your pictures in here, Deborah. I studied women for the sensuality and the sexiness, men for the musculoskeletal system, pairs for the relationship and the design that occurs with two bodies. And so this work is like that. Unafraid, we try anything. The sumo wrestler and the two greatest Ironman triathletes in the world. Tummies and backs. Did a whole back study. I studied backs for 3 months. Everybody's back. Some fronts. We throw stuff on bodies, paint, goop, gel, poisons, everything. Football players, track stars, sexy models. Dancers, nothing like dancers. So another part of the body project is liquid light. What is luminescence? You put your watch at your bedside at night. Now, this doesn't happen too much. Everybody has a digital clock and this, that, and the other thing, but your watch glows at 4 in the morning. What is that? That's luminescence. What is luminescence? Luminescence is the change of light from one wavelength to another over time. Fluorescence is luminescence that occurs instantly in 10 to the minus 4 seconds. You've all been in these head shops where cobalt lights are shined on things and they glow differently, these day glow things. Well, there's a chemical called sodium fluorescein that we used in retina, where we injected in a person's vein and using a blue light on the eye, photographed this fluorescence, which would turn green, that would run through the blood vessels. Sodium fluorescein angiography. It was one of my fields, one of the textbooks I wrote. And I said, gee, gods, why don't we try to use that in the studio? So we put sodium fluorescein, I got this stuff from my retina friends, squirted it into Caro syrup, shined blue light, the right kind of exciting blue light, and whatever held the Caro syrup, which was fluorescent, turned green. So then I had blue skin and green fluorescence. 2 separate wavelengths, close, yes, but separate, from which I can then do anything. And that's what liquid light is. So here I made the green light blue and I made her blue skin pink, but that was, you know, could make black and white or white and black. It allowed me to, it was great. It was a constant surprise. I tried everything, threw stuff at people, just everything. And we did a few campaigns. We did one for Sergio Tacchini. This girl on your right is holding a handbag, is it? A handbag. Was this fun or what? So, a dancer, I was working, she said, look at this, and she did that. And I said, wow, you know, photographers are interested in light and dark, contrast. Black is black, white is white, you have contrast. And it occurred to me if I came in close, maybe I could see light and dark in a different way than you usually see it. And so was born this idea of what I call folds. They're light folds or dark folds or all kinds of folds, but they're body parts shot in high contrast close up. Sometimes a single body. Sometimes there's 2 tushies on the right there, touch to touch. They had as much fun as I did, these three girls. Why does a photographer shoot flowers if he's not a still life photographer? Why would a photographer shoot flowers? This is my theory. Beverly feels that this was the same as folds, or this was liquid light, or this was patterns. But I got it in me to do this. I don't know why I got it in me, and I did it generally at night in the studio with no assistants. The studio was black, and I played opera, Casi fan tutti, Mozart's Casi fan tutti, on the music running through the studio. And I had gardeners and garden experts bring me stuff. And I made this picture. I also think that many photographers shoot flowers when they've got to shoot and they're not busy with something else. So that could be also. A hotel in Switzerland bought all these images and filled their hotel and all the rooms with these images. It was pretty nice. They invited us to stay for 3-4 days on them, and there were the images in every room. Well, I wanted to get to underwater, and I wonder if you'd allow me to skip quickly through something. I'm just going to go quick, and then we'll take a little question. We'll truly answer some questions. Then I'll end with the underwater work. I studied pregnancy for the same reason I was interested in the body and biologic sculpture. And I started studying pregnancy on every Saturday in Marin County in 1992. There's an Alvin Ailey dancer, Bahia, who told me she was pregnant. I said, get over here. And then we studied her every 6 weeks. I tried some fashion and beauty and it didn't quite work. This one worked, probably. And the one on the right was my idea that you can't see pregnancy from the front, but you sure can see it from the side. And then I had the pregnant women bring their babies back. And I did this project with them. And then I said, let's come back every year. So I've been now photographing about 250 kids whose mothers were pregnant or they were newborns, or for some of the kids in New York, I started when they were 5 or 6 or 7, and they come every single year for their photograph around their birthday. And when they're in 2nd or 3rd grade and they begin to write, I have a questionnaire, and they sit and they write and answer the questionnaire, and I allow them to slip their answers in an envelope and seal it themselves, and I promise them that's in a time capsule. I promise them no one's going to read it. Your teachers, your parents, or me, no one is going to read this. And I hope that there's some stuff in there. We'll see. But these kids take it very seriously. The first questionnaire when they're 7 is, what do you like about your life and why? What do you want to change about your life and why? And what do you want to do, what are you going to do when you grow up? And each year the questions become a little more sophisticated, a little more advanced. And I'll just show you a few of these kids. This is a project that it gives me a headache to think about, because there are 200-300 kids, 250 kids, and every year there's material, not only photos, but written material. So I decided when they're grown up, when they're all 21 or 2, and many of them are about that now, but some on the way, that I'm going to spend a year, 1 day a kid, and then maybe over a year I can complete the project. We'll see. But I'll show you what it looks like. So what does it say? She's 39 weeks, the baby's 4 days, 2 years, what is that? 8 years, 12 years, 17 years. It's pretty interesting. 39 weeks, 7 days, 19 months, 11 years, 14 years, 19 years. 39 weeks, 8 days, 2 years, 8 years, 11, and 20. 39 weeks, 13 days, 2 years, 8 years, 11 years, 15 years. They change. And this is the last one, which also really interested me. It turns out boys do not like standing next to girls and certainly don't like standing next to boys. But if they're twins, boy and girl twins, boys perfectly comfortable standing next to a sister. So there they are, these two sweet twins. At 6 years, 7 years, at 10 years, she started to grow. At 12 years, the epiphyses of her bones were already, she stopped growing, but she was already a young woman. But he's still a little kid. But in 1 year, between 12 and 13, he grew 8 inches, and the next year he grew another 8 inches. Then you see what happened. Let's turn on the lights. We'll take questions, and I'm just going to skip through this till I get to the underwater work.
Questions?
Hurts. Hurts so bad.
Hi, Howard.
Hi.
I wanted to ask a question about your lighting. There was one photograph where you described 9 different lights in the shot. Did you start taking the picture and say, no, we need to add this or that, or had you already thought it through before you started?
You got to be self-critical. You know, you got to look at it and you got to learn how to say, so what? You know, you look at your picture, you're taking, so what? Now, how can I make this more than so what? First of all, you have to have a vast visual data bank. That's part of being scholarly. You have to know when you're looking through your camera that it's been done before. I have seen this before. How can I see this? Or how can I make this happen where it's not been done before? Let me try this. And there are no rules. You can put the light on the floor. You can put it on the ceiling. You can put it behind them. You can put another light in. You try things. And okay, there are a lot of failures, but so what? To me, it's not an eye. It's just a photograph. And to fail, it was so. As you make notes, you learn something. So the lighting evolves from intricate things, you know, and details and paying attention and making notes. Every shoot I've ever done, there are notes. I can go back to a shoot from 15 years ago and repeat it because everything is there, every measurement. So that's how we learn. That's why the lighting is different. Anything else? Anybody else have a question? There'll be another question. Usually you're in a passive zone, and then the passive listening person, then you turn active, and there's somebody who wants a question.
Hi, Howard. So I'm just curious. So you're self-taught, right?
What was his name? What was his name? Paul Dixon? Remember? Beverly is an anniversary gift in 1987, bought me an hour's lesson with a Berkeley portrait photographer, Paul Bishop, and I still have his notes, and that was it. It was great. A nice man who was gentle and sweet and talked about lighting, and I would never light the way he lights. You know, he made portraits for a living, so he wanted to make nice pictures. And so I learned how to make nice pictures. But then I remember the first project I did was on, I did a project called Gifted Woman. And the idea was Beverly had worked in television at PBS and done many women's programs. And I decided to photograph women who were famous not because of how they looked, but because of what they did. Condoleezza Rice was a PhD at Stanford at the time. Barbara Boxer was a congresswoman. But Ruth Bernard, the great photographer who died at 101 not too long ago, I had the lights up and she said, "Oh no, not for no lady," she said to me. I said, "Miss Bernard, let me take this picture like this and then I'll make it a little nicer." She said, "Oh, okay." So you let me do it. So I learned. I made mistakes. I made lousy pictures. And you take notes and you learn. So this is a Martin Peterson story. And I'm going to embarrass you, but so what? We were blessed. Beverly built a house in Marin County. And I asked her to build a swimming pool indoors. And at the deep end, we'll put an NBA glass backboard over the deep end, and I could shoot baskets from the deep end. What great exercise is that? And so we did. She did. The ball would bounce off the rim into the water, splash, hit my eyes. Corneas would hurt, so I wore goggles. And I had friends over, and I see underwater something was happening. It was great, and I had some friends who were dancers. And I realized that the adversary of dance is gravity. And underwater, there is no gravity. And wouldn't this be marvelous to study dance underwater? So I worked only on Saturdays, because I was a practicing physician, for 6 months. In those days, 1992, we used rangefinder Nikonis cameras. You're underwater, so what you see is not what the camera sees. So focus, resolution, composition, impossible. Lighting, everybody was blue. And you put a strobe by the pool, I knew well enough, it falls in the pool, you're electrocuted and you die. So how do I light it? How do I color it? After 5 minutes, the subjects were like this, the chlorine was burning their eyes. How do I control the chemistry? It was 85 degrees, and models and dancers have no body fat, and they were shivering after 10 minutes. What's the right temperature? What do you suppose the right temperature is? If you go to a hotel, it's 82 degrees. Laps is 80 degrees. A nice home swimming pool, warm, 85. What's the right temperature for shooting for 10 hours? 92. And sometimes we go up to 95 if I'm shivering. But anyway, so I had to solve 7 or 8 physical problems. And I took notes. I shot by myself. I had no assistant. I set it up. I figured it out. I called 1 or 2 underwater photographers who didn't want to help me. You're on your own. I read. I consulted, I talked to everybody, but in 6 months, I had it figured out. I knew how to make a picture. So I called Katita Waldo, that redhead I showed you. I said, Katita, can you swim? She says, yes, I can. I said, well, and I told her, and she came over, and this is the first picture I made. First picture I made. It's still not perfect. Her skin is a touch blue. You can turn the lights out. So I felt I was onto something. And so I shot dancers every Saturday, making pictures. And then I told you about Graphis. And any young photographer should send his work into Graphis. And anybody interested in visual imagery should be reading the Graphis journals. I sent this picture into Graphis, as well as 4 more. It was a series. And then there was a phone call, and Beverly said, Martin Peterson from New York is on the phone. Huh? Martin Peterson from New York is on the phone. So I took the phone, and he said that. And I said, lots and lots. He said, I'm coming to San Francisco. I wonder if we could have dinner, and I could see the pictures. So he met us. He took us out to dinner in a nice Italian restaurant in San Francisco. I brought these slide sheets of 20 pictures each, about 5, it must have been 100 pictures, and showed it to him, and he said, my God, I'm going to publish this. And he published this book called Water Dance. And there, my relationship with Martin Peterson began, and it was one of the most fortunate, wonderful things in my life. So I want to say something, and I was expecting there would be a lot of students here, because I look at a lot of students' work, and they come and show me. I try to make time for them all the time, and they'll show me portraits they've made. And sometimes the portraits are cleverly lit, they're cleverly posed, they're complicated and interesting and peculiar, the set is nice, but the subject are their friends who are average. Average, nice people, but most people are average. There's a set, and a photograph is only as good as weakest component. And I tell students, go out and find gems, walk the streets, offer them pictures, find something wonderfully fantastic face that's beautiful or strange or idiosyncratic that you can't keep your eyes off of, and that's who you make pictures of. So, to this end, that a photograph is only as good as the weakest component, I want to talk about this person. This model, Shawnee Free Jones, who's a daughter of Da Free Jones, who had 100 wives and 300 children. She has 300 half-brothers and sisters, lived on Fiji, and played in the coral reefs during her childhood. She would put bungee cords around turtles and go for walks, had tea parties. And when she came to the pool and went underwater, I thought I was seeing God. I thought I was seeing God. She was nothing like it. It was like Mozart. It was like... So I'll just show you a few of her pictures. What she did and how she looked and the way she did it, I've never seen anybody do. And we made this film. You swam in a gentle current for the first 9 months of your life. Return. In order to do that picture, this is one take, 30 seconds. She had to go underwater, wrap the thing around her. It took about a half a minute, and then we filmed. So I submitted this picture after Water Dance was published, and I understand was reasonably successful. And Marty said to me, "Are you working on anything else?" I said, "Yeah, we moved from dancers, there's models, there's fashion, there's beauty, there's sex, all kinds of things." He said, "Let me see the work." So I sent in a bunch of pictures. He said, "I would like to publish the work." And this was among the best pictures of the work. All she did was fall. She just went from the surface of the water and fell slowly. And that's how that picture was made. And so Marty published my second underwater book called Pool Light, and he turned the picture. And I said to myself, well, it's Martin Peterson, he must know something. And I, from that point on, have used this picture just like this, vertically, all the time. And sure enough, graphists just printed out something to their email people using this picture, and he turned the picture back. Didn't he? And H2O was the third book that was published. So I'll just show you some of this underwater work, and then I'm going to show you the secrets of this work. This is the pool in the rain. 2 assistants. This is, it's important to scrim out the sun unless it's a cloudy day. The sun creates harsh, contrasty light, dark shadows. It's terrible. And you've got to knock out the sun, and that may be enough light, or use other lights. But why are these scrims in the water? What are they doing? What is he doing? This is me waiting. We photographed in Marin County for 5 years extensively, so I knew underwater photography, and I knew what was needed. So when we moved to Connecticut, we have a home in Connecticut, we built a pool. I said to Beverly, I want a studio. I want to be able to light in this pool the way I light in the studio. And I studied it and thought about it, and we built at the deep end of the pool a room with ports. And this is the room. The pool is over here. And the hatch is on the deck of the pool, and you walk down, and there's a room. And the room is full of equipment. This particular picture was taken when there's no equipment. But I could sit in the water, have a wire on my camera, attached to a radio slave on the deck, which is connected to radio receiver in the pool in that room. I take a picture, pop, I got flash, and I can control that light any way I want, and that's why the pictures look the way they look. This is me shooting me in a mirror on the bottom of the pool. But you can see I'm attached to a wire, which is the radio slave. I use a ladder in the deep end sometimes to get really close. I can come up, and then I can go down. But you can see the ports here. We hang a black backdrop on the deck. There's a mirror here to help reflect some light for this particular shoot. This is me underwater shooting. I shot once for the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue, and that's the image. In the winter, we put a dome on the pool. And that's what it looks like. It's pretty nice. But it snows. And sometimes it does that. And we have a shed with pool equipment, tremendously complicated gizmos to make these imageries, but it's just like in a studio. I'm able to control the light. I can shoot with light behind, light from the side, light from the floor, light from above, because I have those light sources. This is me underwater shooting through the water at a model on the deck. This is me on the deck shooting through the water at a dancer underwater. And these are some of the images made in this pool. Water, when water meets air, it's a mirror, it's a reflectant. When you get out of the shower in the morning and you see water on you, what you're really seeing is the surface of the water reflecting light in the bathroom. Where water meets air, it's a reflectant. So it's a reflectant on the surface of the water, but it's a reflectant from underwater as well. And that explains that reflection. We've done a number of fashion shoots underwater that have been published, and the clothes do wonderfully. I've worked with many stylists, but the main stylist I work with and has done really genius work is Nico Keflis, who is a talented, hardworking, focused, serious, bright, creative, and imaginative stylist. Gets along with everybody, with the models, and it's always been a privilege to work with him. We did the Escada perfume launch, and if we use oil-based makeup, but if you use regular water-based makeup, that's what happens, but it could be nice. Fashion. Shawnee on the right. Another font that I did on the wall. What was the hardest letter, do you suppose? Well, you can't see it too well, but the U. They both had to be upside down and parallel. Shawnee on the left. There's a body knot, right? I used the reflection. We had athletes in the pool, the great Gary Hall, Olympic champion at the 50 meters, synchronized swimmers. When we do fashion, it's sort of like this. The stylist goes in the water. I put a rope over the surface of the water that the stylist can hang on to up here and up here, set the clothes, and then come down stage to the side of the camera and a picture can be made. It's not easy. This was done by putting a transparent belt around the model's waist and a black cord and an assistant at the other end pulling the dancer who maintained a pose, and the ribbons flew. And the reflection makes this magic. Dancers. We did this picture on the left for Finlandia. We wanted a sexy picture. It had something to do with water. Allison Clancy on the left. I was hoping she'd come, but she's also a musician and has a band and is playing tonight, but I wanted to introduce her. Special. I did the Corps du Ballet underwater. You saw the advertising of this. And if the sun hits the pool, one side will be lit and the other side will be shadowed. So I waited till 3:08 in the afternoon when I knew the sun would be absolutely lined up with the pool. So the two sides would be the same. And we did this picture. And I did the Last Supper underwater. And we had a big show in Italy, and the Italians went crazy over this. I really, it was the craziest, most wonderful stuff I ever. Oh my God. Oh. So that's the book, which I feel really good about, and that's how we did it. Thank you.
I love your work, as you know, and the ballet decor shot we've never really talked about that. And when you brought this troupe in, that's a lot of people to direct underwater. And not everybody's good underwater. How did this go? Can you tell us a little story about that?
Yeah, I had two models. I had a modern dancer, and I had a ballet dancer, and I had a bunch of swimming suits on the side of the pool, color fixed the way I wanted it fixed, and I had 4 ropes over the pool, equidistant, to make the rows, and I had little marks on the ropes, 4 little marks on the ropes, and they had yellow and they had blue. They went up, they held the rope. I said, okay. They went down. We had practiced the pose. The mistake in that picture, if you'll look, is modern dancers don't smile. Ballerinas smile. You can pick out the ballerina in every one and the modern dancer in every one. And I only discovered that later. So anyway, then I took the picture. They went to the side, they dropped off their bathing suit, they swam to the other side, put it on another one, and we took another picture. And then I said, next rope. We rehearsed in front of mirrors in the house. And I have like a little room with mirror. And I said, let's figure out what the pose is, what I think will really work. We played around. That's the pose. They saw each other. Dancers can see what each one does and mimic it exactly. And they had it in their good motor memory, so the pose was great. And they did it. But the modern dancer and the ballerina went. And after I look, I went, oi, oi, oi. So that's the answer to that question. Anything else? Yes.
So Howard, what did you learn from the process of going through everything?
Oh, come on.
I mean, did you see how you had evolved? I mean, was there 1 or 2 major takeaways besides distilling the greatest pictures? What did you learn about yourself, how you grew, or?
I'm courageous. I'm unafraid. I'm not afraid of falling flat on my face. For commercial shoots, you can't fall flat on your face, and never have. Every commercial shoot we've ever done, the art directors and the clients walked out happy and huggy. But that was mostly solving physical problems. How am I going to figure this out? How am I going to do that? I was a contractor. So, I really worked at it, and I solved every single problem that's been faced so far. In terms of my own stuff, I'll try anything. And I'm not afraid to ask somebody to do something. I've only had maybe 1 or 2 actors that said no to me. They were afraid of their image. I don't want to do this. I'm afraid how this looks. And okay. Steve, do you want to say anything about, since you edited this whole massive thing, do you want to make any kind of, I'm going to talk for a minute while you collect your thoughts, because I'm throwing you on the spot, but that's Steve Fine, who sat in our studio for 8 months and really worked hard, admirably, impressively, responsibly hard.
Any regrets?
Yeah, a lot of the pictures you wouldn't let me put in. To this day.
Everyone needs an editor.
So there you are.
Since I got it, can I ask one question, Howard?
Mike Yamashita.
Were there real gems in there out of 44 million frames? Did you find
I hope everyone in there is a gem.
I know,
they wouldn't let me put anything in that wasn't. So I would find a great image, and Steve would say, it's okay, it's close, but it doesn't, and I accepted it. Didn't like it, but I accepted it.
But you, this is many years later, so I'm saying, did you miss it the first time, and the second time around, going through all the work, you started finding gems?
Ask Mr. Fine that answer that question.
Stuff
How
you
would you
missed.
answer that question?
Photographers are too close to their work, and it's good to have a second pair of eyes to take a look at it where I have no horse in the race. They're like your children, okay? You can't really pick your favorites. So when I come in and I look at it, I'm looking at it objectively because I looked at a lot of photographers' work. None of it's mine, so therefore it's either a picture or it's not a picture. And the rules were, no garbage, no pictures that we would be unhappy with if they got published. So we took more out than we put in.
Yep. You know, take this quote. This is all mine. Time is a genius. The more time you give something, the more time you can take editing, the more time you can work at a project, the more you can go over this. I went over this talk 11 times, and I wish I had gone over 12. The more time you can put into something, I think the better, the more discoveries you're going to make, the better you're going to become of it. Thank you.